everyone, this is Divinely Powered with Antonia. Today we have the lovely Karen Kay, who I met at the Mind Body Spirit and jumped on her and I said, oh my goodness, will you please come on my podcast? And here she is. She is a best-selling author from Hay House and has 3 oracle decks. And welcome Karen. She is all about fairies and mermaids. So the fairy queen herself, Karen Kay, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Antonia. I'm super happy to be chatting with you. And I love the way you didn't kind of literally rugby tackle me at the Mind Body Spirit, but we had it was like a beautiful firework that went off when we connected. So I'm so happy to be chatting with you now.
Yeah, I just saw you and I thought, oh, she looks like an interesting soul who's very connected. She'll be a lovely, lovely guest and hopefully friend.
Oh, yay.
We've just found out we actually both live quite near to one another in Cornwall, so that's exciting. We may actually be doing some situ things in the future, so look out for that, everybody. Okay, so Karen, tell me all about your connection with fairies. How did this all begin? And unicorns and mermaids
And angels and spirit guides, everything. But my main kind of focus is fairies and mermaids because we live in Cornwall and we're surrounded by the ocean, so that's there. But I had my first fairy connection when I lived in London. Actually, when I was a little girl, I was living with my grandmother in Charlton, it's just on the southeast London, and she had the most magical garden. I remember when I was a child, and she loved flowers, especially roses, and it was the wild roses, really beautiful fragrance. And I think that's why the rose thing has stayed with me, actually, because it was from a childhood thing. And she would be pruning the roses and I'd be standing there with her, and as the petals fell, I would gather them all up, put them in a little pot, add some water, mush them all up, and I believed I was making perfume for the flower fairies. It was actually rose water. And I would leave it after I made it in this pot between 2 garages. So there was my nan's garage and my neighbour's garage, and this tiny little space. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to get my leg through there now, I think, but it was really tiny, and I would squeeze down there and put this pot there. So it's a liminal space, actually, but I wasn't really aware of that at the time. And then the following day,
sorry, I don't know what a liminal space is.
a liminal space is an in-between space. It's where the veils are said to be thinnest. So you have liminal times of the year. So they would be solstices, equinoxes, the dawn, the dusk, when it's like an in-between space. And fairies love in-between spaces. So that's where I instinctively left it there. I didn't know that's what it was. I just left it there. And when I would check, the fairies would, well, I believe that the fairies had taken it. Some more cynically minded people might say, or scientifically minded people might say, well, the water obviously evaporated overnight. And yes, that is a possibility. However, fairies can absorb the essence. And I just knew in my innocent little heart that that was what was happening, and that the fairies had taken the perfume and that they approved. So I did that quite regularly, actually. And then I would perceive them as little points of dancing light, like really tiny, as if they were penetrating through their dimension into our earthly dimension, a human dimension. And that stayed with me as well. So that was my first encounter. I was probably anywhere between the ages of 5 and 7 that I remember. There may have been earlier memories, but I can't remember those.
Wow, I've seen the little the little twinkles of light and wondered if they're fairies before. And it's not Goliath, Galiliath, something like, was it called?
Goliath Falls.
Goliath Falls,
Yeah.
around there.
Yeah.
Do you know the fairy presence there?
Yes. Yeah, there definitely is. And fairies can be everywhere. They can be more predominantly in certain places like Goliath Falls, because it's a wild place. There's waterfalls, there's streams. It's very raw and wild. And Cornwall the reason that I live here, and possibly you too, is because it is so kind of wild and raw, and you're so connected to nature. And so there are a lot of fairies, a lot of fairy activity in this part of the world, but also everywhere. You even get urban fairies too. So they're not restricted with where they can go because they're magical beings.
They don't really like the city too much, do they? Don't they prefer nature? Or what do they prefer?
Well, nature is their natural habitat. Fairies are primarily guardians of nature. They can be called, people sometimes call them earth angels or nature angels or earth spirits. But just to be clear, fairies are not angels. Angels are completely different. Angels are celestial, divine, non-denominational beings, whereas fairies are of the earth. Their purpose is to be guardians of the earth. And a beautiful bonus of fairies is that they're magical too. So they have this beautiful magical energy that we're all kind of familiar with.
Wow. Lovely. So can you see fairies more fully now, or how do they appear to you?
They appear in many different ways, and they only show themselves when they really want to make that connection. Now, just because we really want to see a fairy, it doesn't mean we will. However, they can show themselves in many different ways. So I do still perceive them as little lights, and I have seen what you might say the typical type of fairy, which was a bit of a shock. I was driving down the A30 once, and I don't drink, so I was totally, compos mentis, is that the word? I don't know where that's come from, but I was driving
for the morning.
It's a long word for me. However, I was driving along, and then I noticed out of the corner of my eye these giant legs. That's all I could say, and it happened super fast because I was driving. I was obviously concentrating on driving, but as I glanced, I saw these giant legs, and my eyes just went up very quickly, although it felt really slowly. And there was a gigantic fairy standing next to a gigantic tree, and it all happened super fast, and it really kind of shocked me because I've been connecting with fairies for a long time, and I'd always imagined that they were always tiny because we're led to kind of believe that, and that's what I felt. So it really threw me, and I went home and I meditated about it, and I asked the fairies, like, what was that all about? And they said every living thing, whatever size it is, will have a fairy spirit, a fairy being of the same size. And it was like, oh, that makes total sense. So that literally blew my mind, because I'd had this preconceived idea about what fairies were, and then this just opened up the fairy door even wider, if you like. So that was a shock. But that fairy actually looked like a kind of flower fairy, even though trees are known to have kind of tree dryads. There's lots of different labels, and we could spend forever and a day getting caught up in all the different names, all the different labels. And again, I meditated on this with the fairies one day, and I said, look, because people are saying, how do you spell it? And doesn't this mean that? And that mean that? And I thought, oh, I can't be doing with this because it's a distraction from what they actually are. So I said to them very clearly, how do you wish to be spelled, to be labeled?
Yes.
And they said, it came back in a what I say, a fairy flash. It came back super fast. And they said, we care not for your human spellings. All we care for is your intention. And every time I say it, even now, I get what I call the fairy fizzes, like the goosebumps, the fairy bumps, the angel bumps. I call them fairy fizzes. And every time I share that, I get that feeling to kind of reinforce it. So the spellings, it's a human thing. They don't really care about it. They care about our hearts, our intention, how we love the land, how we care about our environment.
Lovely. I think that I know that one of the siddhis, which is a spiritual superpower, is to change size. So you can either go very, very small or very, very big. It's also, I think they have it in super hero movies as well. But that is certainly something that an evolved being could do, or a magical being. They would be able to make themselves very, very big or very, very small. And sometimes when we do missions, because sometimes we're taking on dark forces, we make ourselves very, very big to make sure that we are safe in different environments. So I think that being big or small is something that is malleable when you're magical.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I was so shocked, because I hadn't really even considered that. But yeah, you're totally right. Fairies and all being, magical beings can change their shape. They're shape shifters as well. So they can also manifest as animals, insects. And you might say, well, how do you know that's a fairy? Because they will act in a slightly unusual way. There'll be something different, something that you can't quite put your finger on, and a feeling. You'll get a feeling as well. So they can present in many different ways and many different sizes.
Yeah. So what do you think is there a message from the fairies? How do the fairies want us to be? What should we learn from the fairies?
It's very simple. The fairies wish for us to be more connected to the environment, to be more passionate about our earth and to protect it more, because they are doing it in their way, but they actually need our assistance. So when one opens to the fairy energy, and they feel your intention, they kind of scan you energetically to see, well, is this person who they say they are? Is this person who they think they are? They'll energetically scan us. And if they feel that connection and that you have that love for the planet as much as they do, then they'll come forward. So it's certainly not only me. As you said, you have friends who work with fairies, and a lot of people do. It's just that they seem to get excited because I'm very open about it, and I work with them every single day. My life has just been taken over by fairy energy, and I love it. It's not for
They're
everyone.
naughty, don't they? I mean, I've had some experience with fairies, and they certainly have been very mischievous. They can be very helpful, very protective, but they are naughty. They
They
do
can
move
be.
things and cause trouble as well. Tell us all about that.
So they can be, and this is something I feel like as well. I'm trying to put a kind of positive PR slant on the fairies, because they have had a very bad press. They've also been associated with dark little demons, which, it's a very different thing. Now fairies, okay, let me say it like this. You can meet someone and you can have an instant like or an instant dislike or an uncertainty about that person or that person's energy. It's the same within the fairy realm. And so you do get very mischievous fairies. You do. But it's what you're calling in. It's what your vibration is calling in. And I've worked with all types of different fairies, and I've got a team now, which is great, and they're very protective, and they are fairies of light. And those are the fairies that I work with. It doesn't mean the other fairies don't try and get in and will cause a bit of mischief sometimes. And even the light fairies will hide things. They'll take I've got this little golden fairy key necklace. They took that ages ago, and I know it's here. I didn't go out with it. And then I hear like little telepathic giggles whenever I ask them to return it. And they said to me, I have to tidy up my room and then I'll find it.
That is naughty.
They're
That
really
is
naughty.
naughty. Well,
They can be.
we've got so one of the energies that we that I teach in my divine empowerment classes is to make fairy food, which is quite fun. But I mean, we might do it in a second, because there's one of my amazing practitioners called Dolly, who always she likes the fairies, and so she'll sometimes make some fairy food, and then she'll ask the fairies she'll tell the children, she's got her grandchildren, she said, I'm going to ask a fairy to tickle your mum's nose. And then she'll ask the fairy to do it, make some fairy food, and then basically the person starts scratching their nose, and her
Yeah.
and the grandchildren start laughing their heads off. So I mean, there are some really cute things that one can do as well.
Oh, there are. There really are. And in fact, all morning my nose has been tickling all morning, and that is a sign. It is one of the signs, definitely.
Okay, so why don't we just add a little bit of magic to this, since I'm a wizard and you're a fairy queen, so we can work together. I think it'll be quite fun. Actually, what I can do, I was thinking about this just before we came on. For anyone who wants to play, obviously, Karen, I hope will be up for it. But for anyone who's watching this at home, I can put fairy food into everyone who's watching this homes onto their hands. So what happens is, it's quite fun. You put the fairy food. So I get people to put their hands out in just a moment. I'll make some fairy food into your hands, and then you can feel them dancing in your hands if they're up for it. You can literally feel them sort of moving around, and then we'll just see what you say about it. Should we do that?
Wow. Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not sure. It might be a bit early for that.
You were the one who moved the interview to the morning, dear.
Well, I'm open to observing that, definitely. I'm definitely open to observing it. I'm kind of, I don't know, I feel a little bit like, I don't know. I will observe it.
Would you like to? I'll do it in my hand, and you
Yeah,
can watch.
yeah, I'd love to witness it, because it's a new thing. So I've not heard of this before. So before I dive in, because I'm driving today, I want to be like really.
No. It would. So what the process is, for anyone who's uncomfortable, yourself included, you don't have to. Don't feel like you need to in any way. But what it is, it's just literally putting your hand out, and I just make a little bit of fairy food, and they come and eat the fairy food. So they end up just sort of dance. It's only like 5 seconds. They just sort of dance around in your hand for a few seconds, and then they go off again.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet.
It's really fun, but you can actually feel them sort of dancing around your hands. It's really weird. Sometimes they grab your finger and do this for a second. It's quite fun.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my gosh, that's so lovely. And talking about fairy food, when you're eating outside in nature, you might notice, if anybody's had a picnic or anything, that the food does taste a little bit blander when you're eating outside. And that's because if there are fairies nearby, they extract the energy of the food, of the flavors. They don't necessarily eat it in the way that we would eat it, but they'll extract the energy of it, which is really interesting. And I thought, because that happened for years, I was like, why doesn't it taste as good when you're outside? So yeah, the fairies will just take that flavor.
That is strange. I know that happens in aeroplanes for an entirely different reason, I'm sure. I think at altitude things don't taste as strong, so they have to put extra flavor when you're in an aeroplane. But
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. This is very informative. This is very informative chat.
All right. So shall I do it in my hand then? Would you like to do it in your hand and everyone else's hand? What would you prefer?
Oh, you do it. I want to watch and observe how you do this.
Okay, cool. So, okay, for anyone who wants to do this at home, so all you're going to do is just put your hand out, and I'll just magically put some fairy food into anyone whose hand is out, and then you can experience the fairy. So I'll make the food first, and then I'll open a little portal. I'll make sure I close the portal afterwards so the fairies can get in. It's important to close portals, otherwise it's going to be naughty.
Yes.
So, but you guys have to consent to doing this. If you don't want to do this, you can just watch it maybe the first time and then rewind and then do it in 5 minutes if you don't feel comfortable, whatever makes sense for you. Or you can do it now with me. All right, so I'm just going to make some fairy food in my hand and anyone else's hand who's out. Okay, and then open a portal for anyone whose hand's out. Okay, and then you should just, yeah, they're now coming towards you. You can feel things in your hand moving about. I'll make some more food. It's weird. You can suddenly, if you feel like you just feel like a touch in your hand. I'll make more food in everyone's hand because it goes really quick. Okay. Let's hear them. Yeah, you can feel them just you can just feel this it's a very light sort of tapping in your hand when you do it. What can you see?
I'm me.
Yeah, what can you see?
Yeah, I'm observing and I'm thinking, when I watch this back, I'm going to do it, because I'm just really like curious about how it works. So there's definitely some energy changing. I can feel that. I'm curious about how you manifest the food and how you open the portal and things like that.
Would you like me to do it again and do it so you can feel it now?
I can, no, I could feel that when you were doing it. I just don't know how are you visualizing the food on your hand?
No, but I make everything with energy, because I'm a creator with energy. So I literally just intend to manifest it, and it manifests as energetic food for the fairies.
Okay.
But you
That's
can,
so cool.
it comes in as that, because obviously they like sweet things, and I know that, and various different things. But yeah, you can make the fairy food. But if people put in the comments how you've experienced this for everybody, but you can, you make it, and then you literally just, they just sort of dance around in your hands, so people may be able to see or sense them, and often you get lights just darting around the room, those very, those bright little tiny little dots that you've mentioned a minute ago. Yeah.
That's so sweet. Oh my gosh. I've never heard that before. Thank you for
I
sharing that.
create
That's so
random
cool.
things. This is part of my magic. I'm always creating different magical
I love
things.
that. I love that.
So could you sense them in my hand? Could you sense them in the room? What was your experience then?
Well, I could just sense that something was happening. I couldn't perceive anything, I suppose, because we're through technology as well. That does affect it, but I could definitely sense that something was happening. And something was happening with you, and then something was happening. I didn't see any fairies, but
why don't we we can go to those falls or here or something, and we can make the fairy food here, or we'll do an adventure, you and me, and we'll make some
okay. Yeah, let's do it in nature. That would be fun.
Let's do it in nature. That'd be really fun. Okay, so tell me about your oracle decks. How do they work? You've got a manifesting one. How does that work? How do you manifest with fairies? How does that work?
So always with their permission, and the deck, I've got it. I was like, where's the box? So that's the deck, the new one that just came out on the 5th of December. So it's my latest one. And so I'll just do a little brief backstory. So the first deck that I did, the Oracle of the Fairies, was quite a healing process. And then I did Messages from the Mermaids, which was even deeper healing. And there was a lot going in my life at the time that needed to be healed and cleared. And then coming through this process, which was probably about 4 or 5 years, I found myself in this position where I just feel great. I can't really say anything. I feel amazing. And my connection with fairies, elementals, is really beautiful. And I started to consciously co-create with the fairies. And it wasn't just about things, because we can manifest things with fairies. We can use the law of attraction, we can do it with the universe, we can work with any beings. But when you're manifesting, co-creating with the fairies, it's just more fun and more magical and more interesting, I find. But also they can help you manifest things like joy, happiness, health and vitality. Although when I say health and vitality, if there are any conditions like physical conditions, you must always seek professional advice. I must say this, these cards are for entertainment purposes, but we can work deeply with them. But you can manifest anything. You can manifest peace, joy, laughter, lots of things, courage. And there's lots of cards in the deck that go into each one, and I literally meditated with them, and just I feel like almost I don't write it, it writes through me, it comes through me, and it happens
An automatic writing sort of thing.
Yeah. And it just, I suppose it comes through my filter because it's got my flavour in it, but it is a strong connection with a fairy energy that comes through. And it's always, I always say, it's always on their terms. So what we're doing is forming a connection, a friendship with the fairies, and that can take time. It can be a long time, it can be an instant attraction and connection, or it can take longer. But that if you're coming from this pure place in your heart, then it will happen at the right time. So what I do, I kind of do it every day pretty much. I'll pull a card for everybody, for the collective on my social media, and that will just be wherever I am. If I'm out in nature or if I'm in a hotel room, wherever I am, I'll pull a card and just see what energy comes through. And it's usually quite relevant and pertinent for the people that see it. It's not always right for every single person, because that would be almost impossible, but it does give insight into, and there's manifestation techniques in the guidebook, plus an affirmation to affirm that manifestation as well. And I could pull a card during this session if you'd like to.
Yes, definitely.
Shall I do one now?
Yes, why not? One for me, and then another one for my audience, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so okay, these cards are pretty charged anyway. I use them quite a lot. Okay, a message for Antonia. Let's see. Very often these cards, while I'm shuffling, they will literally fly or fall out of the deck or stick in my hands or something. I literally just shuffle them until this happens. It's perfect for you. Magic and miracles.
Yeah,
and
that's gonna me.
That's St. Michael's Mount. It's St. Michael's Mount in the background, or it's inspired by St. Michael's Mount in the background. And yeah, these two beautiful fairy folk with their magical wands, and their, I mean, it is your energy, isn't it? Magic, miracles, open to that, working in the way that you do. That's so beautiful. And I think that's just like a confirmation for you, like a reflection of who you are and the space that you're already in, because I don't really feel like you need much advice or guidance in that, because you're doing it naturally, you're living it, you are manifesting your life in such a beautiful way. And yeah, this is a confirmation of that, I feel.
Beautiful, thank you.
I love
and what
that.
about my audience? What do they need to
Let's see for everyone watching.
And your audience as well.
Yeah, all of us, anybody watching, and if it resonates, take it, and if it doesn't, then let it float on by. That's what I say. So let's see what message we have for the collective. Oh no, not that. Okay, that's the one. Joy. We could all do with a bit of joy. I don't think anyone could deny that. And this fairy king is bringing love, light and joy to each and every person watching, listening now, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. And you might think, I don't feel very joyful, I'm not in a great mood at all. But we can create inner joy. We can ask this fairy king to come in and infuse us with joy, always for the highest good of all. And we can put ourselves in a position where we can be more joyful by simply recalling a beautiful memory. We've all got a memory of joy somewhere in there, and we can call on that. And then when you're calling on these memories, you will literally relive it physically. Your brain will release those chemicals to make you feel more joyful. And just the more joy that you want to feel, call on the memories, and then at some point you will feel that joy naturally and instinctively. For me personally, I feel joy every day that I wake up, and that is because I feel so grateful and so blessed to be in a human body at this time in the planetary evolution, and I get to play every single day. Now, don't get me wrong, I do have off days. We all do. We're human. However, my natural kind of default is joyful, grateful, and I just feel so blessed. And joy is a blessing, not only for yourself, but for those around you. When you're around a joyful person, it spreads the same way that love spreads, and the same way that anger spreads. If you feel an angry person, you don't really want to be near them, but when you're joyful, they're like sunlight for you and you want to be near. So you could be that for others as well.
Beautiful. And I think joy follows gratitude.
Yeah.
Actually being, and innately grateful and innately just, look, we're all going to have crappy days. We're all going to have things which are going to annoy us at times, but it's allowing yourself to feel those for a day or a short amount of time, and then just getting back on with it. And I do think that, I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I think happiness is largely a choice, and it's choosing on what you are focusing your energy on. And you may have some crappy situation that happens, but what are the good situations? And I do think we take for granted, and it's very easy to take for granted how many wonderful things that we've got. The fact that we've actually got a phone or a laptop to be able to watch these interviews means we probably have a roof over our head, means we probably got food in our bellies, means we probably got some warmth and people that love us. And actually we're starting with that, and it's easy to get complacent with it, but to just be grateful to have the love in your life, the friends in your life, your basic needs met, I think is really important.
Definitely.
We've actually got a lot, and we've got a lot more than we realize. And if you also think about 100 years ago, all the things we take for granted weren't a thing 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So, even 100 years ago, there was no music. Like, you had to be a king to ever hear music, to have people around, to have to have even someone playing a lute or a guitar. They wouldn't have had instruments 100, 200 years ago. So we're able to just, play something on our phones at any point. Like, that is a huge, huge luxury. Hot running water was this century. Like, I think it was the 30s or so, we got hot running water. Can you imagine not having hot baths or showers? It's a huge luxury that we're just so complacent against. I know everyone's going back into the cold showers and that stuff, but the ability to be able to sit in a warm, snuggly bath, especially when you live somewhere like England, the sea's so bitterly cold. It's we don't realize how many amazing, beautiful things that we've got, and how different it was, and how privileged we are from 50 to 100 years ago. Even it's that close.
Yeah, definitely. And the gratitude is so true. From gratitude comes the joy of literally just being alive, just existing, comes with joy if we allow it, and not take those things for granted. And it's a good little exercise to do, actually, to count your blessings. That's another thing that we can do. We all have blessings, even if we feel that we don't. We do. There will be one, even if it's a tiny one. We'll find the blessing, and then when you focus on the blessings grow, as you know. And hopefully the people listening now, everybody listening now, can think of one blessing right now and make it grow. Think of another, and you'll just automatically feel more joyful, more uplifted, more blessed, and grateful.
Wonderful. And we were also discussing, just before we started, following passions. Let's go into that.
Yeah, well, I definitely am following my passion, and my passion is the fairy realm and life, and spreading joy, because I feel like the world needs it more now. Now more than ever. That's the way I get all confused. We definitely do need more joy. I do not watch the news. I do not tune into those energies. I focus on creating my own reality, and it isn't like I'm putting my head in the sand. I'm fully aware of what's going on in the world, and I send my love to it. Worrying about it is not going to help anyone. So my passion is to bring more joy, bring people's awareness to the fairies, to the land, because that is the fairies are guardians of the land, coming back to that, and bringing people's awareness to that, and how we can actually work with fairies to make not only the world more beautiful, but our own internal worlds beautiful as well.
See, I think we shouldn't. I think we should take action on things that we can affect, like and really do help in the ways that we can, and then let other things that we can't really affect be. Like, there are wars going on at the moment, and there are some really horrible things happening globally, which I'm sure everyone's aware of. But I mean, obviously we can do meditations, and we can do sending healing energy and that sort of stuff. But boots on the ground, there's there's very little that we can do, boots on the ground, to be helping in these situations. So try to bring up the vibration and do the work where you can in your community,
Yeah.
Rather than getting bogged down by all these things, because stress causes illness. And if we're getting stressed about things that we can't take action on, then it's really, it's pointless. It's really quite pointless, and it's very destructive.
Yeah,
So,
and like you were saying earlier about the things like just 100 years ago that we didn't have access to. Now, we wouldn't have had the knowledge of these things going. It's not right
natural.
to carry the weight of the world on one person's shoulders. And many of us here listening now, and us, we're empathic beings, so we will feel the pain, the joy, everything. We'll feel everything. And so it's important to protect ourselves from that as well, whilst maintaining our own peace as much as we can, because that is, like you're saying, raising the vibration of the planet, which does have a ripple effect. It's not airy fairy, it's actually real. And you know it, and I know it, and many people listening now will know that as well. Focus on filling your own cup so you can fill the cups of others. It's not selfish.
No. And we were talking about following our passion. So I think that's one of the problems that many people have today, is they're so bogged down and they're doing jobs that they hate, and they're having their life is not how they envisaged it. But I think one important thing is to find something that you love and start doing it, whatever that might be.
Yeah,
as a hobby or something else. Just start doing things that you love every day.
Yeah.
That will build joy and happiness and gratitude within your heart.
Yeah, definitely. And there's never a perfect time to start. Well, there is now. It's now. Like, we're like, oh, I'll do this when, I'll do that when, I'll do that if. No, get rid of the whens and the ifs and the buts. Just do it if it's in your heart, if it's a passion. Tomorrow is not given. We have now, while we're in these beautiful human bodies, to act, to play, to create, to make beautiful things in this world. And that comes from our heart. And it just adds again to raising the vibration, to just spreading more joy in the world. So don't wait. Think of something right now. Everyone watching now, think of one thing. I'd really like to do this. I've always wanted to do that. This is on my wish list. Just do something towards it. One thing. Now.
And also, that's the thing is, we also have to realize that Rome wasn't built in a day. And okay, you may want X, Y, and Z, but what's the step that you can make today, or what's the step that you can make tomorrow? And but before a few months, weeks or months, you'll have made such good headway into achieving what it is that you desire. So it's just taking action every day. And actually, the thing is, yesterday doesn't exist and tomorrow doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is now.
Yeah. So why not start now?
Why not start now, indeed? Okay, so fairy circles. What's this whole thing about fairy circles? And I know that there's legends around it. First of all, what is a fairy circle, and can you get trapped in them? What happens?
Okay, so there's a lot of things about fairy circles, fairy rings, as they're commonly known as well, and they are in reality, they are a group of mushrooms or fungi growing in a ring. They are notoriously connected with fairies and fairy activity, and they're said to be signs that the fairies are there, or the fairies were there and they were celebrating. Now there's a story about Reverend T. Kirk. Now, is it T. Kirk? Am I getting confused with Captain Kirk?
That sounds like Captain. That sounds.
It does. Reverend Kirk, definitely, because I've written a song I've channeled his energy in a song. So he was said to be taken by the fairies, and he was like a very well-to-do, respected member of the community. He was a reverend in Scotland, and he was said to be taken by the fairies, and it is possible to be taken by the fairies. However, I feel like nowadays it's more a place of connection. Now, I would not recommend that anybody goes into a fairy ring without some kind of spiritual protection, shall we say, psychic protection, as always, whatever being you wanting to connect with. But I do. I just,
you walk into them, do you?
yeah.
Do you walk out at the same angle? That's supposed to be, because that's one of the things. Okay, so maybe that's a myth.
No, it's different for me. I don't follow the rules, so I do it in a different way. So I say, don't do as I do as I say, or something like that.
There is the legend goes that when you walk into one of these fairy rings, if you come out at a different angle than the one you went in at, then you can actually get trapped in there. So that can be quite a dangerous thing. And if you accept food and drink from the fairies whilst you're inside it, you are never getting out. So never take food and drink from fairies. They had that in the True Blood series as well. I've heard about it. Is this not a thing? What do you think?
Well, I think it can be a thing, but I also think things are things when we empower them, when we put our belief into them. So what we believe, we manifest. So if we believe that that's the thing, that you have to go in at the same angle as that you come out, then that would be a thing, if that's what you strongly believe. I have consciously walked through portals and intentionally come out in a different direction, because I feel like, and I know I'm going in and out, I've got one foot on the ground and I've got one foot in fairyland, in the realm of the fae, and I have to have one foot in this ground, and they know it as well, because I wouldn't be able to share. So I kind of am walking betwixt and between, if you like. And it's fun. I love it, but it's not for everyone. So you have to always, always, always trust your own intuition, your own instincts. So if you find a fairy ring and think, wow, tune in, see how you feel. And if it feels right, then go in.
What about mermaids? Tell me all about them.
So mermaids, I first connected with mermaids when I moved to Cornwall. So I was, I don't know, 18, no, maybe I was in my early 20s. And as soon as I came to Cornwall, it was like, I'm home. This is the home of my soul. This is the home of my spirit. And I was just aware of all the ocean. We've got so many beautiful beaches around. And I was inspired, compelled to draw mermaids. Now, I'm not a conventional artist. My extent of my art is kind of either very abstract, colourful blobs or matchstick people. However, at that time, it was almost like an obsession, and I was drawing with just pen and silver ink these mermaids and mermen, warrior mermaids sitting on thrones with tridents, and I remember colouring in every single scale in a silver pen. It was so specific, it was so and I didn't know really where it was coming from, but I went with it because it felt exciting and it felt right. And then I feel like even now I just have to be near the ocean, I have to be near the sea. And then when I go to the ocean, there are many guardians of the ocean, many, but the mermaids are the ones that I'm connecting with and that I have connected with. And they just started speaking to me telepathically again. And that's how Messages of the Mermaids, that oracle deck, came about, because they were just coming through and they flowed through so quickly. I doubted it. Like when I wrote that manuscript, I doubted it because it came through so quickly, and I thought, can it really come through like this? And it hardly needed any editing at all. Like those messages just came through very strongly, and they're very deep and direct. Mermaids, it's all about the emotion, the ocean, the flowing, the going deeper, the connecting, the revealing, all of these things. It's very powerful, and it can be quite challenging connecting with mermaids. They're not on the same kind of energy level as fairies, although some fairies can be challenging to connect with too. But mermaids especially are very just deep. Like you can't hide the truth. We can't hide the truth from fairies either, but when you're working on that level, it's all out, and it's very deep and very healing, and very beautiful as well.
Do you have your deck to hand?
My mermaid deck.
Yes.
That's such an interesting question. Because
we like doing things ad hoc here and making it as we go along to make it as natural and as real as possible. So
hang on, I've got the box. But I'm
so
not
we
sure.
never know.
I'm not sure if the card. No, the cards aren't in the box. But I do have a card here that I always have by the side of my desk, which is gratitude.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So do you do the illustrations then, or do you have an illustrator?
No. So with the illustrations of all of my decks, which is so beautiful, because I'm a very creative person, but like I said, I'm not, my artistic expression is blobs or collage, digital collage. So I get the visions. When I get the messages, I get the visions, and they're very intricate, they're very detailed, and then I write down what I'm seeing in as much detail as possible, and then I connect with the artist that I'm working with and share that with them, and then so the artist, this particular artist, is Linda Olson, and all of her work is about the ocean and mermaids and sea creatures, so she really has a natural feel for it anyway. And some of the things that I was explaining, she was, really? And I'm like, yeah, because it's so specific. It's actually more specific with fairies, the details, because when you go into the fairy realm, it's everything has symbolism and meaning and is pertinent to that card. So if you go into the imagery of the cards, you'll get more from it.
Same as tarot, yeah.
And the mermaid, I love the way her art is very flowy and fluid, literally like water, and it's perfect. So yeah, I see the visions. I think it's probably just as well that I can't do everything. Leave something for other people to do.
Beautiful. Have you got anything upcoming you'd like to tell us about?
I have, yeah. There's always things upcoming, but my next thing that I'm doing is the fairy weekend that I do in Glastonbury, and it's 2 days in Glastonbury Town Hall in the UK, and this time it's celebrating the work of Wendy and Brian Froud, who are like the fairy godmother and the fairy godfather of fairies. They paved the Fae way for all of us today with Brian Froud's book Fairy or Fairies, and they've worked on Labyrinth with David Bowie and The Dark Crystal and all of these amazing things that are part of our culture. But they're so humble, these people, that unless you know them, people are like, who are they? But they are.
I think we need to get them on the show. My assistant Luce, I bet, is jumping up and down because Labyrinth is her favorite movie. So I think we're going to have people on.
I just went to a Labyrinth ball in High Wycombe where they created the film of Sarah running across the bridge, and we went to a ball there. It was so nice to go to an event that I didn't organise, and the Frouds were there as well. But moving to what I'm doing, it's called the Froudian Fairy Weekend, and they are the guests of honour. There are lots of other guest artists there as well, but it's all about their work, their body of work. So Wendy does the sculptures. She's responsible for the sculpture of Yoda in Star Wars as well.
All my cats are called Star Wars characters. I have a cat.
Oh my gosh. Well, this event, the really good news about this event. So
I've got some Star Wars cards on my desk.
Oh my gosh. Well, she didn't create Yoda, but she sculpted the Yoda that we all know and love. So her energy is in that. And she makes many, I think just above my head, you can see the bit of a fairy there. And that's one of her healing fairies. And this is one of her fairies as well. So they're really, really ethereal and beautiful. Her work is just stunning. And anyway, so they're going to be there for the whole weekend. It's totally free during the daytimes to come in. So what imagine like an average market, and then put some fairy dust on it, lots of fairy enthusiasts, and then you are walking into a magical market that is so, I don't even want to call it a market. I'm just, when people ask me to describe it, it's like a craft fair, but with so much more. And the energy is fizzing, and people all dress up, and you just
Ooh.
see all these beautiful creations. And the Frouds will be there on both days. There's some exclusive limited edition folders that are being made up with their artwork in it as well, that will be available during the day. And we are doing a fairy meet, greet and eat, which is meet and greet with food on the Friday, but that's sold out in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking, oh, will anybody come? And then it was 20 hours, it completely sold out.
Holy
And then
smokes.
there's a fairy ball on the Saturday night, which is there. I've been doing them in Glastonbury since 2009, but I started the events in Cornwall in 2006, and the fairy balls pretty much always sell out, and this one
Wow.
sold out as well. But everybody's going to come as one of the Froud fairies, so you'll find your inspiration in their imagery and their sculptures, and
Wow.
then manifest that look. So it's going to be really magical. There'll be lots of stuff on social media, I'm sure.
What's the date of that?
That's the 2nd and 3rd of March.
Beautiful.
And yeah, so but during the day, as I said, on Saturday and Sunday, it's totally free. So if I always say, if you're a little bit fey curious, then just come along. It's
Thank
free.
you.
You can come in, poke your head round the corner, you can get sparkles in your hair, you can get fairy face paint, you can buy a little fairy crown. You don't have to buy anything, you can just be in there and be in the energy. Because for me, it's about putting that energy out into the world for people who just are curious and want to experience that magic of fairy in reality. So
Beautiful.
yeah, you can tell I'm passionate about this, can't you?
Yes, amazing.
And just briefly, I do the Three Wishes Fairy Festival, which is another passion and love of mine. I've been doing since 2007 in Cornwall, and this year I'm moving the whole festival to Glastonbury with the fairies' blessing, because I was ready to give up the festival. It's been a long time, I've been doing it for a long time, and I said to the fairies, if you want me to continue, you must find me the perfect location. And within a week or two, the metaphorical fairy doors opened, and I was introduced to these people who have this land. You can see Glastonbury Tor from the festival site. It is perfect, and I'm really, really excited. And that's not until August, so that's a little way off. But yeah, Three Wishes Fairy Festival. I'm very
What
excited
about
about that.
any books? Anything coming up? Anything upcoming?
Well, as you ask, yeah, I've literally just signed a contract for a book that is already pretty much written. I'm like you in the sense, just begin it. Like with my first Oracle deck, I created the deck before I got the contract because I knew it was going to come into being. And that is a part of manifesting. You do the thing, you do the action, you take the action, and then it might not be in the order that you want it to happen in, but I was confident that was all going to manifest.
Very Field of Dreams, isn't it? If you build it, he will
Yeah,
come.
yes, totally, 1,000,000% that. So the book has been in my heart for a long time, and all the decks have been coming out, but the book, it will be my first book. So I can't really say much more about it at this stage, except that you're the first person that I've revealed it to in a show. So yeah, I'm very, very excited, and it is about fairies, I can say that.
Amazing. Isn't that
And it'll be out later this year as well, which is really amazing. So yeah.
I'm excited about that. Well, thank you so much, Karen. Any last words of wisdom before we close?
Oh, just count your blessings, be grateful, and find something to be grateful about every single day. No matter how you feel, find that one thing, and then water that, nourish that, and it will grow. And just spread your love, your light, your joy, be peaceful, as much as you can in this world and just be a light for others as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Karen, for being here. And yeah, see you later, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.